Sevrin Yeveshtahu. They figured it was dry. This refers to the fish island thing in the strange story of Rabbi Bar Bachana. Let's see. And they parked their boat on a fish. And they figured it was dry, and therefore it was like an island. And so allegorically, in the Likutei Moharan, this refers to Ha'inu shehat tefillah einoi oise peres. The prayers are not doing anything. So it's like it's dry. It doesn't have any vegetation, nothing life. Now there's two kind of contrasting explanations of this story. One for the Maharsha, which is also sort of a symbolic representation of the story. And without getting into the wording of the Maharsha, because we've done that in previous shiurim, it seems that he is interpreting this as a story of double darkness, where they didn't know something was wrong. It just seemed like everything's right. Yeah, we're already in, yep, this is it, guys. We're already in Geula Shlema. Yep, with the Beit Mikdash. Yes, this other building over here, and Mashiach. The carbon tummy is going to be daven good. Although there is something to it. That's what the prayers are based on. But so then the point being, we don't have anything to pray for then because we already arrived. So this is one form of double darkness. All the peros all the fruits have already fallen. There's nothing else to get. So this is one form. Now Rabbi Nachman's approach to the story is different, not because he actually disagrees with the Maharsha, but because he has a different emphasis. Maharsha is speaking in Chedushi Agadoth, where he's just saying, here's what happened in the story. Here's the diagnosis of the problem. Rabbi Nachman is approaching it like a doctor. And perhaps the Maharsha doesn't, Chedushi Halacha is also, we're speaking practically, but all of the Likutei Moharan is practical. And so we interpret the story in terms of the idea of single darkness, that I know there's a problem at least. I know I have something to pray for. And that's a better state of affairs than not knowing I have something to pray for. So, but within this single darkness, which is sort of on the way back up, I admit there's a problem. I'm working on it. There are ways that one can fall back into the situation of double darkness. And one of them is that thinking that the prayers aren't doing anything because, well, they're praying and they're not getting the immediate result. And then so this can essentially fall back into thinking, well, then this must be it, right? Which is, if I say this is Geula Shlema, we made it, or I say, I guess everything's just up to fate, well, that's a little bit the same statement, because practically it means that I'm not praying, I'm not trying to change it. But then Rabbi Nachman reassures us, Avol ba'amath, Einoi came. But it isn't so. Continues the story in the Bab Basra. El Salkinin, V'afinin, V'ashlinim. So rather, they in the story it means they got off their boat and they thought it was an island, so it's safe for us to go on this island here without additional prayer, and let's make lunch. They started cooking, they started baking and cooking, which upset the fish in actual how the story goes. So then Rabbi Nachman allegorically interprets it to say, "Ha'inu kol tefilos," meaning what are they cooking? They're cooking all the prayers. Salkinin v'oilin. Says, no, don't worry. It's not that your prayers aren't doing anything. They are. They're going up. They're going up to heaven. They're being heard. So this is a weird answer. If I say to somebody, it's not working when I pray, and their response is, no, your prayers are going up. They're being heard. Okay, that's wonderful, but I wasn't saying my prayers aren't being heard. That's not what I'm concerned with so much, but that nothing has changed in the material world. And in fact, this is discussed extensively in Brussels, that one of the main goals of prayer is actually to literally change stuff. And the firstborn animal, the first cattle. There's many things that we offer to Hashem. For firstborn son, we give a kohen some money. There are many sorts of offerings that we do to Hashem regarding the first of things, because there's something very important in the first. There he says in the Halacha is that the first time you make a miracle with your prayers, remember that. And keep that in mind every time you pray for stuff, because you can actually change nature. It's very important not to forget that. And that's the single darkness side. But it's important not to forget that. The double darkness is to think that that isn't the goal. Okay, it's very nice that I achieved a state of euphoria. It's very nice that I What did you do in Shacharis today? Oh, I went to Tzilus. Wow. I went to Atikim, and wow, that's amazing. So then they asked the other guy, so what did you do in Shacharis? I said, well, I prayed for a pair of shoes. I said, well, that's okay. And then what happened? Well, I got home and I had a new pair of shoes. Yeah, okay, that's sort of like, wait a minute. Wait a minute. Like, there were actually shoes? That's crazy. The other guy, he says he went to Atikim, and I don't even know what that means. I guess I believe him, but that's... I can't make the shoes thing happen. I can tell people I went to Atikim, but if I tell people I made shoes with my prayers and they don't see any shoes, then I'm going to be laughing stock. So that is not normal that he made prayer. But actually, this is the power that we all have, and this is a very important thing to remember. And this is bringing us out of the double darkness of thinking that the emphasis in prayer is not to actually change reality, but to make me feel better or something like that. So it's a strange answer that Rabbi Nachman says. Then he reassures us that our prayers are going up. Continues, and everybody who prays a lot, they build the Shekhinah more. So they build up the, well, I can't say the Shekhinah, so it's a little bit like saying, so what did you do in prayer? I went to Atikim today. So we need to understand why this is Rabbi Nachman's answer to this question. My prayers aren't doing anything. Peros. It seems to me that the word peros, it means fruits, which is the word root, peresh, that refers to something separate from its source. A fruit is now its own entity off the tree. The mitzvah of revu, to be fruitful and multiply, that means making another person who's not you now, they're a complete separate entity. So something outside of the prayer that is a result of the prayer is really what I want from the prayer. Okay, so this statement here, it's relevant to Medrash. It's brought in Medrash Tanchuma, Parshas Vayera. Amar lehen HaKadosh Baruch Hu the Yisrael. Hashem says to the Yidden, you should be careful to pray a lot because it's the best quality, no other quality compares. And okay, so that's a nice general statement about prayer. Well, that's wonderful. And in what way specifically Hashem is that so? And he continues, Hashem continues to speak in the Midrash. Even if a guy is not really worthy that his prayers be answered, and let's just say answered here means like a literal thing changes in the world. He gets the money or whatever it is. And even if this guy is not worthy of Hashem just raining kindness upon him for no reason. Because he prayed a lot, I'm gonna be more kind to him than is warranted. Seems like there's sort of a switch that happens at the time of prayer, that what would have not been the situation given the rational details of the situation can become the situation because of the prayer, be that rational or not, and it's not really. Shechach Yasiv, boy, and then the Medrash in Medrash style is going to bring a pasuk to support this claim. Kol Aruch Hashem Chesed ve'emet. All Hashem's ways are kindness and truth, and so then it explains the pasuk. That Hashem says, that means that the reason it says Chesed first in the pasuk before emet is because I prioritize Chesed and over truth, for the kindness over truth, and I prioritize being righteous over being making justice, which is fair for everyone. No, it's a little nicer than just fair. So that's sort of a weird support for this idea that if a guy prays, he's going to change his lot to go from one of the emeth, where he's not really that worthy, to chesed, where he just gets anyway, and despite what his level of worthiness would have been in the world. So it says all Hashem's ways are chesed, saying that chesed is first. Well, then what do I need to pray for? That seems like it's already sort of the situation telling me. So this kind of a little bit puts us back into the Marsha situation. You could read this Medrash in a very different way, according to the way the Marsha interprets the Bab Basra, with the double darkness thing. It says that, well, I could just tell my, like, when the Midrash brings the pasuk, say, lest the guy come to think that what the pasuk means, that all Hashem's ways are chesed and emes, is that Hashem's going to precede chesed, is going to put kindness over truth without you having to do anything to bring that about. But it doesn't say that in Midrash. So it's a grand chiddush. It's a very large novelty. It's an eyebrow-raising novelty to say that on this Midrash. So, but still, Rabbi Nachman brought something that would bring about this Midrash. He brought this up in our minds. He knows we read this Midrash. He knows we're reading it now, and he wanted us to think of it and scratch our heads about it. So, how do we come out of this double darkness sort of thing that we're being put into, where we have this big question? So, what does the guy need to pray for anyway, according to this midrash? Okay, so we need to medayek the words a little bit. So, this midrash also refers to, it says all of Hashem's ways are in this way of being chesed and emes. So, what is this? Why this word for ways? I have another book here. In Mishlei, we also have this word up here. To protect the ways of justice and the ways of a good quality will be protected. Okay, so this is a classic format for Pesukim, and particularly Pesukim in Mishlei, and maybe Sifrei Emes in general, but particularly Mishlei, that you'll have a pasuk that it seems like it just said the same thing twice. Sometimes you would have mafarshim that will tell you have explanations that will say, yeah, he just said it twice in different ways to strengthen the concept. But there's always somebody who doesn't agree with that explanation and breaks it apart. And I'm going to read here from the explanation of the Gra, who I've never seen the Gra say that, it just means the same thing, he just said it twice to be emphatic. No, he always makes a distinction. And it seems to me that this is part of the reason that Mishlei is written in this way, to force you to make these distinctions. So, once you distinguish any of the words in the first half and the second half, what we're going to distinguish with archois, which means paths, is the same word that we encountered in our medrash connected with Likutei Moharan, and derech, which is another word that ostensibly means the same thing. Okay, so the Gra says, Linsur Ki'ir Netzura. So he's just emphasizing Linsur, the first word of the pasuk, to protect, as it means protect is in a city that is protected. It's ways. And what part of the city in particular? Hadarachim Katanim, these small pathways. Shehem Nikraim Arachos. Arachos, it's written here. That's okay. So a one difference is that an oirach is a smaller way. It's like a back alleyway, a secret path. It's not the same way as the major road. So oirach uderach hatan zatzar, that it is a small and thin way. He came darka shel ba'alei Torah, because this is the way of those who learn the Torah. Ba'alei Torah is not just a guy who a Baal is someone who owns something. It's not just a guy who learns a parak in the night, in the morning, and parak in the night. Maybe if he memorizes the whole thing the first time he learns it. But it's a guy who's seriously putting this thing inside of him. He's seriously working at it and taking possession of it. And this is as opposed to the main route. So we see that there is a change, and that the pasuk in Tehillim that's brought in this midrash is actually indicating to us that all of Hashem's arachos, all of his the narrow, the secret paths, are the place where chesed precedes emes. And where chesed, there is actually a novelty that occurs. That if it was the other way, then we would surmise, well, what is already the extant situation in the world, and how can we, within that, without upsetting that in any sort of way, be kind, be relatively kind, given the situation. But it's really emes. It's just chesed. It's kindness flavored truth, but it's not the same thing as if kindness precedes truth, and because then there's actually a novelty, right? Truth is just what is extant in the world. What has evidence that it is so, but chesed can precede that. So this does sort of bring us to a review of one of the great general concepts of Likutei Moharan Torah base. We're talking about the prayers of Mashiach. This is the grand theme of prayer, and how are Mashiach's prayers any better than mine? And one of the things that we discussed early on is that the prayers of most people sort of shuffle the pieces around. They take what's already good in the world and essentially they move the good from places where it is not as warranted to be among people who are not behaving in a good way to those who are behaving in a good way. But the problem is that people who don't behave in a good way will steal, so they'll just come taken back. And so it's not a lasting solution, it's a band-aid solution. And it doesn't actually change the reality on the ground. It's because there's something about the prayers of Mashiach actually create a change on the ground, which is really at the root of our question here. I don't just want my prayers to go up, I want them to actually change stuff. So one of the significant things about the prayer of Mashiach is that in addition to being prayerful, that it is a thing with movement and feeling and genuineness, and it is also a discipline thing. Right, we said that if someone is only passionate, they will be passionate at the right times, they will be passionate at the wrong times. When they are passionate at the right times, then let's say this in as reductionist, naturalist of ways we can. If someone is passionate, they use their passion during prayer, then they're yoitzi, so to speak, on passion for that period of time. They've used a little bit of it, and so they can now be in this sort of post-emotive intellectual state that they don't have to feel strongly about something, but they can look clearly at something. And now they will make better decisions. And the person who chose to use their passion for that is then going to bring about a better situation, a more good situation. And also the more good will come to them. They're just making better decisions. And so this will create a sort of good that is good until they get passionate in a situation where it's not good to get passionate, in a traffic jam or something, and then they make a mistake, chas v'shalom. And then, the bad just came and took back the shefa. It's a very delicate balance. It's the house of cards to bring the shefa to the side of good. And without the discipline side of it, it doesn't tend to stay there. And so at the very least, we could say that the novelty would be keeping the shefa on the side of good, keeping the benefit, the abundance on the side of good. With those who will make more of it and make more good things happen as a result of having that shefa. Now, that isn't really that novel, but we also haven't discussed all the discipline that goes into the prayer. It's not only following the halachas of the prayer, those halachas about exactly what time to pray, that makes a huge difference. To pray with intensity, particularly at some of the bookends, that aleinu, which is at the end or toward the end of most of our prayer, is supposed to be said with awe and intensity and strong feeling. It's said there's a halacha that this is so. Shulchan Aruch that this is so, and it's close to the end. So we don't get tired at the end. So halacha, we don't get tired at the end. So we really channel our energy into that. But it's more than that. There's the kind of person we are when we go up to pray. And we can develop this. We can develop what a smarter person will pray for something better, because they're smarter. They can think of better things. And the best way to make ourselves smart in a way of MS is through the Torah, particularly through learning of Halacha. It is one of perhaps the most rigorous, just challenging areas of learning, and also all of the learning is directly focused on having to actually do something different in the physical world, and so it makes us be in a very practical way. And so already we're talking more and more about things that will actually change things. Now, how does Halacha actually change things? And how does it also affect our prayer in a way that changes things? So when we learn Halacha a lot, one thing is going to happen eventually. It's going to happen. Someone is going to ask us, what is the Halacha? And this is a life-changing moment, both for the guy who's being asked, first time it happens, maybe every time it happens, and for and without any explanation required for the guy who's asking. Because what you say, if somebody asks you the halacha, they regard you as someone who is, if they ask you, well, what should I practically do with my life? They clearly respect that you have been spending a lot of time with this learning, and they're actually probably going to do what you say, or they wouldn't bother asking you what's the halacha for this thing. And this could be what they eat, what they don't eat, and if that person's wife is permitted to them on that given day, or if there's a period of time they must wait. See, huge things can be changed here with how you paskin halacha. If that guy, if he owes that guy money, or that guy owes that guy money, that can make it there. Especially if you're talking about a significant amount of money that would actually have a dispute and ask for arbitration concerning. These are things that actually make a very big difference. And it is a humbling thing to be in that position. In the Kudei Moharan on 4. Rabbi Nachman discusses some of the ways that we connect with tzaddikim, and he says that there's the category of looking upon the tzaddik's face, and there's the category of giving tzedakah to the tzaddik. Maybe you could say this means receiving from the tzaddik and giving to the tzaddik, and this is receiving and giving. And there he says that the cure for depression is to look upon the tzaddik's face, and the cure for arrogance is to do the tzaddik's will. And why would these cures work? Because if someone's depressed, they are low, they need more life, more energy, and so they get it from receiving from the tzaddik. And if someone is arrogant, they have too much in them, and they need to give some of it away, so they give it to the tzaddik. And then they are more humble after. And so this is the thing that happens. If somebody learns and learns all the time, and that doesn't necessarily humble a person. It can if their learning is very practical concerning what's the actual halacha, because then they will soon realize how just very complicated even simple decision making is if you really think about it, and then wow, it's not intuitive. My intuition does not. I have to do a lot of work to make any of these decisions. Right, the guy who paskins the halacha, he's not just sitting around. He works harder than the guy who asks. The guy who paskins the halacha, he has to stay ahead of everybody else in the shul, because they're going to come ask him. And so he has a responsibility to them. He has a responsibility to the tzaddik, and a responsibility to Hashem. We have a mitzvah d'oraisa to be a judge. So if somebody asks them the halacha, you kind of have to answer, or at the very least help them find somebody who can answer. If you don't know the answer, you're not really supposed to just be like, I don't know, man, I can't help you. Or at least help them. Well, I don't know, let's look in the book together and try to figure it out. But there is sort of an obligation. It is serving God to answer people's questions of halacha. And according to this idea from Likutei Moharan 4, this is going to, it will be a sort of a dump of energy that could potentially puff a guy up. He's going to be like, wow, I just paskined, I just gave a lot of energy to produce a real life-changing decision. In a way, you just answered that guy's prayers, whether he got the answer you wanted or not. Yeah, if he does what you say, you just change reality with your Torah learning. And if he had asked somebody else, he might have gotten a different answer. If he had not asked somebody, he probably certainly would have done something different. So this is sort of a large dump of energy. There's also another reason why it is so humbling to be in a position of being asked with the halacha. You're not supposed to be like, I'm going to paskin, because if you do that, nobody takes it seriously, right? But if you're just sitting in the corner of the shul trying to hide from everybody, and they ask you the halacha, Rabbi Nachman, he didn't want any followers. He kept trying to go away, but Rabbi Nassan Zal, his primary student, was really, really fast. There was like a thing about him. There's many stories about the speed of Rabbi Nassan in various areas of his life, and Rabbi Nachman can never escape. Right? I was in a class one time, and it was an issue of practical paskening. And there's an idea that when someone is asked a real question, not a theoretical question, not a test, what are the opinions of you, what would you do if somebody asks you that, but somebody's actually asking you this, that you get Ruach HaKodesh, wow. You get divine inspiration. God helps you directly to answer the question. Why would that be? So he gives us a nice mechanical answer. He says, because you know they're going to do what you say, so you better not mess up. And that years Shemayim of, man, I better get this right. I am not just sitting at the pundit here like pontificating. I really have to get this one exactly right. Not just sound smart, but be right. That Yiras Shamayim is what brings them to Siyata D'Shemaya. That humbleness to heaven at the time of being asked a real practical question like that is what brings them the help from heaven. And so another thing you could say to this is that when you are in the position of changing reality with the Torah that you've learned, and how you've brought yourself onto this path of Orachos, the narrow path, the path of let's change things actually. Let's do what this prayer is really about. You just change reality for that guy. Hashem says, okay, so I'll change reality for you.